is worrying. Now I don't want to keep bringing worry. But very interesting article from Lily Guo.
Okay.
And Guo, it's spelled, but it's pronounced Guo. It says, tired of hostile
And Kate Candell, don't forget her.
I'm sorry, Kate Cadell. Yeah, I'm sorry. I think
Cadell.
I was actually reading it elsewhere, and it was just credited to Lily Guo. Sorry.
Okay.
Tired of hostile Washington, China courts Indiana and Minnesota, and actually that headline could be expanded. So this put me onto something really weird. There is this idea that because of deteriorating relationships between America and China, that means when the Chinese government decides something, it trickles down to everything else, right? That entity is not allowed to do whatever the Chinese government's not allowed to do, right? They said it's bad.
Yeah.
But in America, because of the state system, right? It's almost like 50 different countries in one country.
Yeah, it is.
So you can have deteriorating relationships between Beijing and DC, right?
Yeah.
Let's say Xi Jinping and President Biden really are not getting along, right? But you could have states that don't need to listen to President Biden, right? They can come up with their own whatever they want to do. Local mayors, local politicians, you can have governors. All these different entities within a state can come up with what that state's allowed to do and what they're not allowed
think
to do.
about it like this, and it was something I really had to wrap my head around when I came to America. It's kind of weird. Like you say, each state's its own country.
Yeah.
So if you go to a specific state and you want to start a certain kind of business, so you apply for it and they're like, no, you can't. If you go to the state over and you say, I want to apply, start this kind of business, they'll be like, sure, no problem. Because there are different laws in every state. So when Chinese influence, when they try to influence politicians in Washington, D.C., maybe because there's more scrutiny there, the American government in Washington, D.C. is like, no, get the hell out of here. But then they go over to like Arkansas or something and they're like, suddenly everyone's like, yeah, sure, come on in. We'll take your bribe.
Yeah, exactly.
That kind of thing.
So here's the deal. There is this organization that I learned about from this. Yeah. And it's called the U.S. Heartland. Let me just pull it up here.
Yeah, bring it up.
It's called the U.S.
Heartland Mayor's Bridge.
That's that was like the event. It's called the U.S. Heartland China Association.
Okay.
And it's a U.S. nonprofit, 501c.
Ooh, what do you know? 501c. Oh, great. Another
Every
think
single
tank.
time.
Another freaking nonprofit Chinese spy operation on the soil of America.
So here's the deal.
Yeah.
When I looked into this, what it looks like is this bridge in the gap.
It's always, it's like, let's work together as long as America, gets the raw end of the deal and China gets the good stuff.
And I think the word in the headline is good. It's China courts, right? What they do is they court local governments, because it's a way of being like, well, we're not going to deal with DC.
Yeah.
So we're going to court these local
we
governments.
We help build a language school for you.
So these mayors, they have been cut off from doing these like cross-border diplomatic missions because of COVID, right?
Yeah.
And because of the fact that public sentiment for wanting to deal with the Chinese government right now is at an all-time low.
Sure.
Who in America is in the right mind wants to court China right now, right?
Sure.
The Chinese government has proven time and time again that they have malicious intent for the USA,
sure.
right? So what happens is you get these like organizations like this U.S. Heartland thing, which is promoting like business cooperations between the two countries and also at a government level. And that's what's the scary part, right? So I want to read this.
Okay, go for it.
It says, when mayors from cities, including Carmel, Indiana, and Oxford, Mississippi, went to China recently, they were feted in ways big and small. They test drove the newest electric vehicle models, some with seats that doubled as massage chairs. They are hosted by a deputy provincial governor and treated to aged Mao Tai, which is baijiu.
Very expensive.
Mao Zedong's favorite liquor from one of the Chinese officials' private collection. Here we go again, right? Typical like, we're going to give you the most expensive alcohol, and we're
going to wine and dine you, and then we're going to secretly film you with the prostitutes and use that to, get a leg over on you.
Yeah. It says their counterparts in China, starved of international visitors and potential investors during the 4 years of the pandemic and border controls, were overjoyed to receive the American mayors, said Min Fan, executive director of the U.S. Heartland China Association, a U.S. nonprofit that organized a trip for 6 mayors to 5 cities in China late last year. Everywhere we went, whether it was Hong Kong or Wuhan, they hadn't had a delegation like this for a long time, she said. Even more Chinese cities wanted to host them, Fan said. Cities were fighting to get in on our itinerary, but that we literally couldn't, right?
It sounds like those stupid shill trips those people do all the time.
It does, doesn't it?
Then all the local press can turn up and...
Yes.
Yeah.
So it says, Chinese provincial and city leaders have for decades appealed to their American counterparts to try and create investment and trade opportunities. Those efforts, stalled during the coronavirus pandemic, are ramping up again with newfound gusto. So here we go again. We can be at a level where the central government in China is like, screw America, we're going to do all this bad stuff. The federal government in America is like, well, screw the Chinese government for wanting to do all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And they can butt heads. But then they go and find local politicians in America that don't have to answer to anybody.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And it says...
wine and dine them and...
Yeah, those efforts stalled during the coronavirus pandemic. Chinese officials are seizing on opportunities to forge ties with mayors and other local American leaders, the kinds of connections that give Beijing leverage against an increasingly hostile government in Washington. Says Chinese diplomats in the U.S. are doing their best to engage in what Chinese and American diplomats called subnational diplomacy, an area of new focus for both governments.
Subnational diplomacy. It makes total sense. Hey, look, this is something that we've both seen with our own eyes. And it's kind of worrying because it's a way of like undermining someone's authority. It's kind of like, hey, it's like going over someone's head, if you're in a corporation.
Yes.
Like corporate politics, like your manager says, no, it's not a good idea to do this. So then they go off to like the head office and like say, hey, I want to do this. That type of thing. Yeah.
So, I mean, this is like, it's one of those things where everyone could be on the same page, but if you're not voting for the right person or you don't know what policies the person you're voting for is, they could just be literally dealing with the CCP.
It's
right
pretty
now.
easy. Okay. If you're in your local area, there's some kind of new Chinese language cooperation school opening up or something like a Confucius Institute.
I have an example.
Oh, you do?
Mississippi.
What is this slide, by the way?
That's the website, United States Heartland China Association.
Oh, okay.
It says, not all bridges are built of concrete and steel. Equally important bridges are built on friendship, cultural communion, and commercial cooperation. Where these bridges exist, communities flourish. You see how nice this is? And this was nice in like 08.
This is always absolute BS because it's always a one-sided bridge that traffic goes one way. The only bridge that exists on the China side is the mayors and stuff going over there and being wined and dined.
Yeah.
That's it. They go out and have these lavish like trips and whatnot, but then it's all on America. It's all about America doing the cultural exchange. It's all about people coming to America. It's all about gaining stuff from America. When do these cultural exchanges ever result in anything coming from China or sending people to China other than this?
Guess what?
What?
When this stuff started happening, I was sold on it too. If you talked to me in 08 and maybe this organization, all this kind of stuff back then, I'd be like, hell yeah, that's great. You bring Chinese culture over to America and maybe we can do like an exchange. You can't bring American culture to China.
No, you can't.
You can't do anything. You can't set up the George Washington Institute of American Culture.
No, you can't.
You can't have any soft power from America in China.
Nope.
But China can have as much as they want, and I would love Chinese soft power if it was from the Chinese people. But it's always from the Chinese government.
Every time.
It's always through organizations like the Confucius Institutes.
Yeah.
And that's what happens, right? And that's what pisses me off the most. For example, Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves, Republican, who last year dubbed China's ruling Communist Party as an existential threat to America, correct? When signing law restrictions on the use of Chinese technology on state networks, recently approved tax incentives for a $1.9 billion EV battery factory.
Yeah, from China.
With Chinese, 10% Chinese ownership from a Chinese firm.
Yeah.
In a quote from Robin Tannehill, mayor of Oxford, which is a nearby town, says, I think we face challenges of kind of shooting ourselves in the foot by eliminating opportunities because we're scared of them. Okay. When it's from a town not far from the proposed EV plant, who joined the Heartland Mayor's tour. Do you see how this is?
Yeah.
Like, we kind of are, like America and the whole is kind of unified in that, wow, this whole Chinese government influence operation thing has been really bad for the U.S. in general. Most people are on board with that. If you look at a Pew Research poll, the average American agrees with that. Actually, the average person in most countries agree with this, right? But then all of that flies away. That doesn't matter anymore because we've elected people that now want to continue dealing with not China, not a private company in China, but the Chinese government.
Yes, that's right. You have to understand that the way China works, it's all Guanxi. It's all about connections.
Yeah.
So when they take these mayors out and they show them on these big tours and all that. It's about building relationships, but it's not about a relationship like, hey, mate, how you doing, friend? It's more about like, okay, I've done you a favor, now you owe me a favor. Yeah. That's how the relationships work. It's like, hey, you know, like we took you around, we showed you all the best places, we took care of you, you know. Remember the hotels? Remember what happened there? You know, remember these expensive things, all these things we did? You know, so hey, let's work on a deal. And so people feel obliged to, you know, when you're in these kind of relationships. It's kind of like a toxic relationship. But it's
like we should have learned from that years ago. Again, I was in full support of as much cooperation with China as possible back in the day.
Sure,
absolutely.
We've learned by now, and having lived in China.
But I think like everyone has learned.
Yeah.
Like everyone, this is like the FBI report we were just reading, right, on CNN or whatever. Yeah. All the situations where China was preventing all the information about COVID, right? We've been through situation after situation where we've seen the intent of the Chinese government, and people are still lining up to do business.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Well, anyway, we're going to keep a close eye on this type of thing, and we'll let you guys know more about this. You know, this is a concerning thing, and I think it's good for people to understand, okay, that dealing with China right now is not a good idea. And if you have any sway with your local politicians, maybe bring it up with them.
Yeah.
Maybe show a little bit of disapproval, like why did this congressman or this mayor or this member of government go on a lavish, all expenses
after they
paid
said the
trip
CCP
to
is
China?
dangerous.
Yeah, why did they go there? What did they do there? Why are they suddenly coming back and wanting to start cooperative product like productions and do things
factories,
with
state projects?
Yeah, with the Chinese government. Because remember, every single Chinese company, doesn't matter if it's an EV company or if they're making electric fans, it doesn't matter what they do, they all have to answer to the Chinese government. They're all linked to the Chinese government. So, you know.
Killing a goat, blood everywhere.
Yeah.
They'll kind of string it up.
It sounds like a demonic ritual or something.
But it's not. You've been there. Amazing. Acrobatics.
It takes a lot of skill to be this absurd.
You're walking through there and it's creaking and the moonlight's coming through. There's like a man in a cage and they're going, ah! We're like, I'm out of here.
Immediately, like these pigeons just went ape and flew into everyone's faces and there was shit flying everywhere. You got a mobile incinerator.
You got a mobile incinerator.
That's not the convenience you want coming to your door, by the way. Like mobile execution van, ding dong.
Not only.
Anyone call for an execution?
You get executed and then they shove you in the incinerator.
Exactly.
When I close my eyes, I can almost see it. When I take a breath, you fill up my lungs. And if my mind